Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. It has been a busy week with patch 6.3, and like I said, I think the start of the year is going to go pretty well. I'm pumping out videos, I'm getting new ideas, I got Ultimate around the corner. I think my first few months are, well, looking to be a pretty good time. But there is something I need to talk to you about, and that is something that is going to be starting in February. Now, for those who may not be aware, YouTube has something called YouTube Shorts. It's basically like YouTube's version of TikTok, meant to compete with them. Now, it probably is on some of your subscribed channels. You probably see some of the bigger channels pump out a couple of them occasionally, maybe one or two a week or something like that. But it's generally been a pretty weird space leading up till now. They basically had a YouTube creator fund, and you earned pennies on those shorts. It was something, and you could use it to grow your brand. You know, that's always a valuable thing. But it was always hard to justify going out of your way to make an entirely new style of content if you're someone like me who does all my own editing and recording and all that stuff. So while I did make a few, it just didn't seem worth my time to dabble in. That being said, starting in February, the Creator Fund is going away, and instead they're going to be properly monetized. Basically, you'll be paid based on a calculation of ads that are played in between across all of Shorts, plus YouTube Premium views and all that stuff. Now, I have no idea how that's going to go, but just in case it goes well, I'm preparing a slew of shorts for the month of February. Now, I'm looking to do this in a couple of different categories. Category 1, stream highlights turned into 15 to 60 second clips. Now, this is going to be some stuff I've even uploaded on YouTube already, even though I have to completely re-edit it because the format just doesn't work. So it's almost like making a whole new video. But there's going to be things like that and stuff that's on my live stream that, you know, they're moments, you know, they're blips compared to the 7-hour streams I do every day, but they can make for a decent highlight clip going into YouTube Shorts. So I'm able to take that content and provide it to you guys in a way that just kind of makes a little more sense. Number 2 is to make something that is a little bit more creative or transformative, where I can speak directly to you about topics that don't really need a whole YouTube video. Maybe there's a question on a weekly Q&A that I think deserves a little bit more dedication, but I don't think it deserves a whole video on its own. I could also talk about trends in certain things, how certain discussions are going, and it just makes for another format to provide the content I'm already providing. Speaking of which, 60-second guides is another potential one that's going to be coming. I've already got a few funny ideas for those, and I am working on, basically right now I'm trying to make a short a day ahead of February and ahead of Ultimate. So when February comes out, I can have them post every, 2-3 days, see how that does. Probably every 3 days instead of every 2. I think that'll be better, but basically what I'm saying is you're going to start seeing shorts pop up on the channel. Watching them supports the channel. If you have YouTube Premium, watching them I think supports even more because it works very similarly to the way that the rest of YouTube works. And I'm hoping it means less content droughts on the YouTube channel because I might be able to produce a short that's 15 to 60 seconds on a day where I'm not feeling motivated to make a long form piece of content like you often see on the channel. So that's where my headspace is at. If it goes well, it could be incredible for the channel. It can be incredible given all the things I've talked to you about in recent weeks and months and all that stuff. But at the very least, I'm excited to start a new venture. Some of you might also be wondering if I would not just upload those to TikTok as well. Kind of a mental impasse on that one. I don't have TikTok. I don't have an account for TikTok. And I don't know that I want to fall down that rabbit hole. A lot of the content would absolutely translate. It's kind of just the same style of content. But do I want to do that? That's the question I haven't really answered yet. And I know a lot of you are probably TikTok users, but you're also here already watching me on YouTube. So it's a question mark. I'm not going to say yes or no. I don't know. That's all there is to it. So that's what I wanted to do for my announcement section here at the start of the weekly Q&A, but I do got to be to sleep early because I have raid early in the morning at 4 a.m. 5 times this week. So I want to get to bed a little early too. And it seems like Ivy is cleaning herself behind me, so that's going to be fun background for the entirety of this video. Anyway, before we get going, Thank you to the sponsors. Get going. Before we get started is what I meant to say. Thank you to the sponsors over on Patreon for supporting. You don't have to. All my content is available for free on YouTube. Yeah, there might be some ads. You know, if you got YouTube Premium, you don't see them, but there's no paywalls behind any of my content. So if you are supporting me over there, thank you, because you don't have to and you choose to. Same with super thanks. Don't think we have any this week, but that being said, people have been great with those. And again, you don't have to. The content's free, but I do appreciate those, and I do want to shout those out every week. Now with that, let's get into the actual questions. You know, the reason you clicked on the video. All right, number one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps. Hello. Writing this on the eve of patch, so hope you've been enjoying the new patch, and hopefully the Paladin rework was good. I did enjoy it, and I have been playing Paladin a little bit in a couple of things, so I've been enjoying that too. Bit of a fun question. If you could combine 2 jobs in 14 to perform as sort of a hybrid job, whether it be aesthetic, gameplay, or where's the read more? I didn't even have a read more option. So, okay, the question fortunately seems to be portrayed here. If you could combine 2 jobs in 14 to perform a sort of hybrid job, whether it be aesthetic, gameplay, or both, as I'm assuming what it would have said, what would it be? You know, it's funny because Red Mage kind of fulfills that idea. So saying white mage, black mage, or red mage anywhere in that kind of doesn't make sense. That being said, I think we go with combining warrior and monk. Because warrior already has a few punching attacks with upheaval and the orogeny. That's the one. So why not just go all the way with it, right? Why not just have a tank, and that's the role I would go with, that just is all hands, just throwing all the hands all the time. It already has the aesthetic kind of now, so just gameplay wise, you know. And Riddle of Earth, look, they can just get Riddle of Earth even after the change for it. You know, they can still get Riddle of Earth, and then they got another defensive cooldown. So yeah, you know, I think we're good. I think we're good on this. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Greetings and salutations. Same to you. Many thanks for your 6.3 guides thus far. I've gotten my links of righteous fire. You son of a, I'm so happy for you. I wasn't going to say anything bad, I promise. I have 100 totems. So I'm okay with that. I actually thought the fight was super clean to farm anyway. So doing 50 kills is no big deal. Had a random question, but I've always wondered what the story behind Memoria Misera Extreme is. Didn't see it in the Shadowbringers questline and didn't see it in Bozja. Just kind of randomly there. Well, Extreme doesn't have a story. It is just an extreme of the story that you do for the Relic questline, the Shadowbringers Relic questline, which does lead into the Bozja questline. So yeah, it's just an extreme version of a trial that is... Well, I'm sorry. It's an extreme version of a solo instance boss made into a trial. So that's all it is. The story of it is part of the Bozja story, though. Hashtag thank you, Happy. All right, I'll take that. Heyo, Happy. Hello. Thanks for the advice in regards to my question on motivation and revitalizing that gaming spark. Yeah, I saw the top comment that like loaded when I started with somebody also talking about this. I'd like to think I've had a good way of dealing with these lapses through my hobby of fishing. Though sadly, work has been fairly hectic during the holiday season. The hours were slightly brutal through my own fault of wanting extra hours. I know that feeling. I'll be sure to try and heed the advice given by finding better balance to encourage a more healthy outcome. May the rest of your year bring good fortune and satisfaction. Yeah, that question is something that I just see a lot in the gaming space. It's, you know what, actually, the problem is I don't see that question in the gaming space. I see the kind of sentiment behind it present. So like people who are just really bored of their favorite thing and just need something else to fill that spot. But I hope it was clear that I'm not telling people they need to like get a life or something like that, because some people can interpret it like that. It's just about finding that second thing that really draws you in. And I didn't have that for a really long time. So it's exciting to get to talk about having that and hopefully lead somebody else to having that too. And it doesn't have to end with a second thing. It could be a third thing, a fourth thing. You know, when I was in college, it was video games and fitness. And then it became such an infatuation that I started taking courses in like food science and stuff like that. So it just kind of cascaded into even more interest and whatnot. And that's knowledge that's carried with me fairly well going even into my adulthood in terms of like what I buy, how I prepare it, how it affects my body. Like being aware of all that stuff can be a curse, but I can also use it as a blessing, I suppose. So hopefully that was clear about that last week. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Salutations, Mr. Happy. Hello and welcome. Having now done 2 wings of the Alliance raid, what would your thoughts be on someday getting an ultimate featuring the 12? You know, I can't even really think about that. Also, this is another one where the read more... Dude, sometimes YouTube just doesn't load the read more button because I actually scroll through and look for read more buttons before I start recording. And then sometimes it just doesn't do it. And it's done it twice this week, which hasn't happened in a long time, weirdly enough. It's such the little things that content creators deal with. Oh, my read more button's not there. What a tragedy, you know? Fortunately, I think I can still answer the question here. In a minute, it would be hard for them to feature them equally. I don't know. I feel like they could do it. You know, after seeing how nutso DSR gets, you just have to designate main bosses, I suppose. I think there's still even fun things you can do without that. But I can't even think about that because there's so much content that doesn't have ultimates yet that would realistically have it first. Like, honestly, before we even think of any Alliance raid ultimate, I can't help but think of Crystal Tower, which if they were going to do one, you'd expect them to start there. The Shadows of Mach looks like it would be primed for a great ultimate. Ivalice as well. Even Nier. Like, Nier, I may not like the raid in its place because it, as I spoke about last week, I don't like how it basically denied us an expansion's worth of world building. But now that it's already there, if you made an ultimate from it, you could probably make it pretty exciting like all the other ultimates. So this being so far down the line of 24-mans, it's hard for me to even like think about it too deeply, if that makes sense. Hashtag Lunascon Senor Barbacoa. Is that right? It's hashtag Mr. Nappy news. No, I'm not napping. I would love a good nap. Last nap I had was like 2-3 weeks ago, 4 hours long. That's, for me, that's almost more than a nap, but even still. Hello, hello. Hope you're having a good day. Same to you. What would you say are your favorite 24-man raids in the game? Wow, we're doing a lot 24-man stuff, I guess makes sense. And if you have time, maybe your top 5 favorite 24-man bosses. Mine would be the Ivalice. Yeah, Ivalice definitely takes the cake for me. I'm enjoying Iglaya and Euphrosyne, which, because people complained enough, I guess I'll say it correctly. I just say Euphrosyne because it's how my brain wants to read it. Ivalice for me is the best balance of story and interesting bosses and even difficulty to some degree, because those bosses aren't difficult. I never struggled with any of them, but watching the people around me fall apart, now that's entertainment. So yeah, definitely going to be Ivalice, and I think most of my bosses would come from there as well. I have an appreciation for a lot of the bosses that I don't think people appreciate much, like Cerberus, for example, being so drastically different, going all the way back to the World of Darkness. I'll even give the Nier raid some credit. The third boss of Puppet's Bunker, the robot that jumps around and you got to follow it and does the donuts, it has all the monitors. That's a pretty cool boss. That's like one of the highlights of the Nier raid is that particular boss, not to mention the music is an absolute bop. But I think most of the other ones, you know, you'd have Thunder God, Ultima, Ozma are all in there. You know, those are really big ones. Ozma in particular would definitely land in the top 5. But it's really hard because they're not on the same pedestal for me as the more difficult encounters, or even the encounters that I do in like trials. It's for some reason it's just harder for me to nail it down to like just 5 bosses with 24-mans. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Mr. Hello. Well, hope you're doing happy. Well, I'm not doing, I am. Never mind. Longish watcher, first time asker, welcome. I want to thank you for being one of the few people that ever talks and gives respect to World of Final Fantasy. I love World of Final Fantasy. Well, the game definitely has some flaws. I think it's underrated and I want to see a sequel happen. The true thing about that, the sequel they said was written when the first game was finished and they needed a green light. They never got a green light, it would appear, because it never got made. And that game it's just been so utterly doomed. Hold on, let me finish reading this before I go on a rant. Let's see. When and if it gets a sequel, what would you like to see from it? Any changes or improvements you want to see from the first game? Personally, I felt like too many transmutations were locked behind late side quests, and it felt limiting. Wouldn't mind having an option, just use stacks of mirages without the human characters. Yeah, that would be one that I would think. Honestly, no. I think it's one of those cases where you maybe improve, like something like that. You improve in small doses and maybe adjust the pacing of features like you've mentioned. But its core components, I think, are perfectly satisfactory, especially once you start discovering some of the more OP combinations or going out of your way to work on that. I think it works really, really well. But man, I don't think we're ever going to see that sequel. They doomed that game. I mean, it was supposed to release 2 months after 15. Then 15 got delayed 2 months. Then they were 2 weeks apart. And then when Maxima came out, something else had just released. It basically got overshadowed every time anything released. And that's an issue Square Enix has frequently. They just don't care about how far apart their properties are releasing. So they tend to bury some of their own releases. I mean, we saw this last fall. They put out like 17 games in like 3 months, and I was like, you gotta stop, man. There's too many, too quick. People don't have the money for this. I'd have the money, and I don't have the time for this. You giving it to me for free, and I wouldn't be able to get around to some of these. So I think they doomed World of Final Fantasy, and that depresses me because I think it's really good. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey there, Happy. Hello. Hope you're doing well with the new content. I am indeed. I was just curious, what is your favorite part of your least played class and your least favorite part of your most played class? So my most played, man, that depends on how long of a time period you're referring to, because I've hopped around so much. I guess in the last 4 years, Dancer would be my most played, and my least favorite part is how helpless you feel when you do not get procs at the right times. So it's one of those like really swingy things. Like, yeah, I love the dopamine hit of getting a ton, but then I hate the droughts that I sometimes get when I'm deliberately looking. Desire sensor. So that's my least favorite part of my most played. Going back to a favorite part of my least played class, I think, so my least played class would certainly be Red Mage. And my favorite part of that is how so sure of its own identity that it is, and how dedicated to being a mix of its old components, as well as some of the things people came to expect from games like Final Fantasy XI, but even going all the way back to Final Fantasy I, the jack of all trades, master of none. Well, sort of. I mean, it's certainly not the highest DPS in the game, but you're looking at a class that can heal, that can support, that can res, that can deal damage, that has ranged attacks and melee attacks. It really is kind of the epitome of staying true to your roots. And I'm concerned about what that will eventually look like, because, you know, like every other job, sooner or later, it's going to hit an identity problem where they can't really build upon it anymore. But they're still going to be expected to keep all of those elements. So, yeah, like with any other job change, excited, but a little frightful. But that's my favorite part of my least played class with Red Mage. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Heyo! Hi! Hope you and yours are doing well. Doing our best. What else can we do? Recently, I decided to finally try to finish my sightseeing log, so I had to tackle the absolutely insane A Realm Reborn Vistas to get it completed. For that, some of the old videos you made came in handy, and it made me think. From your perspective as a content creator who has been at it for a lot of years now, how do you feel about the new activity that, for a variety of reasons, might still be impacting that content? That content, given the mostly evergreen nature of Final Fantasy XIV. I imagine that, for example, Unreals might cause new eyes to turn to those old guides, or steady stream of new players looking to tackle stuff like Eureka. Not a straightforward question per se. I mean, it doesn't need to be a straightforward question. There's no requirement that it's a straightforward question. Interested to hearing your insight. I always say that I just do what I do because I want to do it. I make a living off of it, but I'm making the videos I want. And if they become more relevant at some point, I'll try, I'll capitalize. I'll change the name of my old Extreme guide to say Unreal. I did that, and I saw a comment the other day said, shout out to anyone who's here because they looked up an Unreal guide for this. And it's like, it's cool, it's nice, and I like being able to produce evergreen content on Final Fantasy XIV, even if it sometimes gets mildly outdated. There's nothing usually so drastic that it isn't still useful. A great example is Eureka. It's even easier now than when I made those videos, but those videos still get you through at an insanely fast pace, and you might pick up a few things along the way that get you through it even faster. So it's great. It's great when those things come back around and they're so useful. And I do, believe it or not, while I do produce a lot of, hey, this just happened, this is how it is right now videos, a lot of the times when I make a video, it is with the intention of it being evergreen for as long as it can possibly be. Because like I've seen, that just tends to be better in the long run. I mean, looking at the first video in that Eureka series, it's over 200,000 views at the moment. Now the second and third and fourth one, less than that, 248,000 views. When I made that video, I could have never predicted it would have that kind of visibility, but I did make it with the intention of helping as many people as possible. And I feel like I've achieved that. And then you can clearly see the fall off, the people who then go through Pagos, Pyros, and it just makes content approachable. It tells people it's not what they thought it was and how bad it was. And I'm glad. I mean, I have another Eureka video that has 125,000 that's just like getting caught up in Eureka, which was released closer to when like Eureka was currently relevant. But I mean, Eureka viewership is like higher than almost anything else on my channel, shockingly enough, other than guides themselves. Like the Southern Front, I have like, Bojin Resistance Weapon First Impressions. I have, maybe I could just do like Resistance Weapon video, Resistance Weapon Upgrade Guide, patch 5.45, complete start to finish guide. Why want to tell me what my viewership was on that? But like that's gotten easier, but it's still that is 217,000. It's just crazy to me how well those things do, but I'm glad they do, and it's why of course I'll be making guides for, the new weapon when it comes out. Will it be straightforward? Sure. Do people still want that content? Absolutely. And I'm going to keep making that kind of content. It's exciting to know that it may have the same longevity as some of the stuff that I've made before. Hashtag Happy Mondays with Mr. Monday. Hello, Mister. Wish you a nice Monday. Wishing the same to you when we get there. If you're recording this on Sunday, good end to the weekend. Well, it's raining in California, but you know what? Technically, that's needed, so I'll consider that good. My question is regarding mods. Well, I don't have any knowledge on this, so I don't know if I can help. How do you feel about them? Do you have a preference for which of them are acceptable or worse than others? Okay, yeah. So I'm actually usually kind of anti-mod for everything I do. It's not even just out of a like unfair advantage, yada yada yada. I've just been down the road of modding before with games that I used to play, and I found that I became more interested in modding than the game, because I would basically like close the game, install a mod, log in, check to see if the mod was working, then go back and scroll through more mods. And I just kept doing that. And I was just spending all this time trying to mod the game. And then by then I was like, what am I even playing the game? If I want to change all these things, why am I even playing the game in the first place? And since then, I've just been kind of like, I might mess around with like a randomizer or like a rebalance type thing to like try to play the game again, but with things, familiar but slightly changed. Visual mods I tend to stay away from, because if I'm playing a game, I like to play it as it was. That's kind of what it is. Now, in terms of 14, I have no interest, just because I like to rely entirely on my own senses, on my own skill, and on my own just with what the game is giving me. I like the challenge of working around things that may not be as obvious, but there are some things that are not obvious and not actually adding anything by not being obvious. Great example is like substats in Final Fantasy XIV. There's no reason why we shouldn't know what our critical hit chance is. There's no good reason. Like, yeah, are balance people gonna go figure it out? Sure. But why doesn't the game say it? There's no reason for that. So like if there was a mod that told you that information based on your character sheet, then that's something that I'm kind of okay with people having. I think that what's another one that I think is okay, like UI ones or whatever. If people want to do character model stuff, that's not interesting to me, but that doesn't, I don't care about that anyway. Or like gear replacement. Like, yeah, I mean, those, I have no interest in those things, but if people want to go nuts, it's where you start trying to either capitalize on advantage or make up for lack of, I guess, a personal skill. So like Cactbot, for example, is a big one, where I've seen people use it as an assistance tool, usually due to some sort of neurodivergency, which I think is the best kind of reasons to have these things. But you're not gonna interview every person who's using it, so you have no idea. But then I know people who like can do it and then just decide not to, and then they're like, oh, it's broken, I don't know how to do that mechanic. And it's like, but there's a way to learn that. Like, are you using it as a replacement for learning? And there are people who do that, and that I can't stand. And then there's like obvious cheating stuff, but it's really just stuff that you could absolutely do or learn on yourself, or for yourself, or by yourself, and you just skip all that and just say, forget it. Or you just literally try to cheat like outright. That's one of them that I would consider like really egregious, the one you listed right there. But yeah, it's really just that stuff. And other than that, I don't really care. Like I'm sure there are more people I play with that I know that use these things or do these things. It doesn't matter. They're people at the end of the day. And so even if I don't agree, it doesn't matter. We're adults. Just move on. Hashtag Mr. Happy on a Monday. Sunday now, but I will be here on a Monday as well. Hello, Haps. Hi. Hope the new patch busyness is treating you fine. It sure is. I've actually just been doing kind of chill stuff. I've been gathering some maps. I've been working on my MGP. I maybe hop on a couple of hunt trains. I grab an expert with somebody. I work on getting the rest of my Manderville relics before the new update comes. I'm getting ready for Ultimate by doing old Omega raids with the low item. I'm busy. It feels good. I had a question about the Euphrosyne story, specifically in regards to Minfina. I was curious as why her symbol depicts 2 moons. Obviously, they explain their forms change based on mankind's image of the gods. However, the symbols that are inscribed on the 12 stones across Eorzea on the epigraph in the middle of the Omphalos both depict 2 moons, despite those monuments presumably being older than both Allagan Empire and Dalamud. Minfina also mentions that the monument and the stones have remained unchanged. So I don't think we have a solid answer to this. Obviously, the modern era of the world, there are 2 moons, or there were 2 moons, sorry, when Dalamud was in the sky. And then we have our actual moon. So to a degree, it made sense for a time, but without doing too much research, I don't want to give any definitive answers. It's very possible that something it goes back to something in regards to the ancients and their beliefs, because as we're learning more about the 12, it comes from old days. Maybe it'll be explained more. Maybe with the new lore book, we'll explore it a little bit more. But I don't want to say anything definitively because I don't have a definitive answer. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Greetings, Mr. Happy. Hello. First time question asker. Welcome, but I've been listening to your videos for months now, though mostly the Monday videos. Hey, any videos. I'll take it. Thank you. Hope you and yours are doing well. Same to you. As someone who grew up in New York City, I like how you say, you doing all right? You all right? You doing all right? I'm all right. I would like to gift you an extra hello in case someone missed it. Not yet, but I'll take it. An extreme hello that lasts till your next weekly Q&A. Oh, I'm sure that one's going to get burned immediately. It was a bit cheesy and silly. Want to add a bit of change to hellos you receive in your comments. Hey, I'll take it. Question for you is about healers, specifically White Mage. I've been a person who started this game mid Shadowbringers and played Conjurer White Mage from the beginning to current content. While there have been changes to healers for 2 years, from 2 years ago to now, something always feels constant that it feels if you want to be a healer, you should Scholar, Astro, or Sage. White Mage is just something you start with and move off of real quick for a meta healer. Why do you think people look down on White Mage? White Mage has some very glaring weaknesses in exchange for it being the most approachable healer, at least in my opinion. People who are not comfortable with healing regularly feel overwhelmed by the other kits, especially Astro, which is your other regen healer. So, the pivot to stay on White Mage is attractive to a lot of those players. So I think that's really what it comes down to. It's that it is being given less tools to some degree in exchange for the fact that it is so easy to play. But a more experienced healer may look for something that is more, I guess is a little bit more involved than White Mage is, or has a little bit more agency on encounters where you already have a lot of experience. So the reason they look down on them is, quite frankly, they just don't offer as much as the other ones do, other than really good healing throughput. The Lilybell is great in a lot of cases. Being able to do free raises or free cure 3s can make recovery a lot better, or can make you as a player feel a lot more comfortable about the job. But it doesn't have, a raid-wide damage mid every 30 seconds, or a phase where, all the damage taken is refunded, or a star they can put down that blows up in advance for mass healing and damage. They're all about very direct actions. So I think that's the big reason why, is they just don't achieve as much in exchange for that ease of play. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi there. Hi. Hope you're doing well. Same to you. I notice in your videos you have it so enemies outline when you mouse over them. I'm curious how, because I think I'd really appreciate that. Oh, I forget the exact setting location. It's in character creation. I think it's character, and then on the first tab on the left, it's under target information. And then it's highlight potential targets. I know the setting is called highlight potential targets, but I think it's character config and then the character option. And then there should be like 4 or 5 tabs at the top. Click on target, click on highlight potential target. I think that's where it is. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays, hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hitting the double hashtag, making sure I can't miss it. Greetings and salutations, Mr. Happy. Hello. Hope you and yours are doing well. Same to you. Despite Asfidelos being my first time raiding in 14, I managed to purple parse 2 fights last year on Reaper. After swapping to Sage, though, I'm averaging green. I'm doing my best to stick to ABC's dot uptime and only ever using OGCD heals. Feel like I'm failing my static members who are all averaging blue alongside my co-healer who defaults to purple. When damage was a rotation, it felt easier than one button. Any tips for bettering my damage? So these are one of those, I think I might have mentioned this either last week or the week before. There's, when you say you're doing those things, in a case where you're giving it to me in a weekly Q&A, I just have to believe that you're doing those things, and then it becomes an enigma, which in reality, when a lot of people think they're doing these things, they aren't. They are doing it, as much as they say, like, and only ever using OGCD heals. I'm willing to bet when the going gets tough, especially with healers who are trying to raise their damage, they are doing more GCD heals than they think they are, or aren't casting things during movement, which can also be very big. I will say this, I don't know what your gear looks like either, and remember that a parse is not an expected average of what you should do on a fight. It is an average of everyone who has uploaded one to the website. So if you have a bunch of people who are more geared than you, and also more experienced, providing those numbers, then it's going to have a larger impact on why you get pushed down so much. Now, again, I have to just take your word gameplay wise, so that's about all I can offer. But also make sure you're eating food. Make sure you have melds, especially the direct hit melds, which are huge on healers. And I think Sage goes for like a 2.42 GCD on average. So, make sure you have all the right melds, your item levels as high as you can possibly get it, and you're potting during 2-minute buff windows. That is important because you really want to be able to make use of all that damage, especially from them phlegmas, yo. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Haps. Hello. Hope the patch is treating you well. I'd say it is. Seeing Square Enix putting in a lot of quality of life into the game genuinely makes me happy. Me too. No, wait, no, I'm happy. You're Baxter. Get it right. Do you have any more quality of life you think should be in the game? I personally would like to see icon filters for the maps. That's one that I would definitely say. Search bar for teleporting. Yeah, okay, that's good. And a better countdown timer. Definitely a better countdown timer. Feels kind of weird that the countdown timer only starts counting individually at 5 when the classes that have pre-pull start way more than that, like Dancer at 15.5. So those are all perfectly reasonable things. I was supposed to answer the question directly about how I would want to go in terms of quality of life. It is, I just mentioned one earlier in the video, actually. Substats should tell you the percentage they are giving you. Critical hit rate should say like 26% critical hit chance and 5% raise to critical hit damage, or it should say something like that and not be so ambiguous. So that's my next quality of life. Actual stat breakdowns on substats. Before I even answer this question, I'm making that a short. Like, not that what I just said, but like I'm going to make a short about the number one quality of life. By the way, I'm sure this bugged all of you. This has been off center the whole time. I even have like a pixel counter, like it even tells me exactly the pixel it is from the side. I just didn't fix it. Hashtag Mondays with a happy mister. Heyo Haps. Hi. I hope the patch week treated. Whoa, you well. Writing this before maintenance. Cool. First of all, being from Dynamis, not a sentence I'm used to at this point, but I'm glad to hear it, actually. Not sure who or when they checked the party finder, but it's been dead at pretty much since the time right before at reset times. Could it be a case of quality versus quantity this time around? I haven't been to Dynamis, so I don't know how the party finder is looking. I've heard people say they're doing really well in the Dynamis party finder. So what I'm going to assume is that the few people who do go over there are actually doing quite well, I guess, but because I'm only taking what people have told me directly. I don't have any firsthand experience. It would be ignorant of me to provide you any insight. Onto the question, do you think they'll ever address the weirdly late Savage Alliance tome? They need to, please. There's no reason for it to be so late, especially on Ultimate patches, because you're just gating people from getting into the content. So I hope they address it, because it's silly. Please address it. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi, Mister. Hope you're doing happy. Didn't I just read one that said that before? I'm having deja vu right now. Do you think there's space in 14's boss design for proper healer mechanics similar to what you see in other games as an alternative in addition to giving them more DPS tools? I think we've seen that a lot more in the recent designs. Well, parts of them. Not other parts, but some parts. Yeah, no, there's definitely room. I was actually having this discussion with somebody the other day. Let me finish reading what you wrote, though. Personally, I see a lot of potential even with current job kits that's not utilized by design of the bosses, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Just to give a few examples, rescue someone who has to bait an AoE. So we actually do this. Like, high-end groups do things like this. We were doing what's called the Hell mode, where basically you do an old encounter, or you do any encounter that you've already beaten, and you just agree to rules that you just do, and if you break those rules, then it's a wipe, even if you finish the boss, you consider it a failure. And on E8S, the way one of the Hell mode challenges is during Icelit, the DPS can never be a part of the final meteor crash in the middle. Now, it's deliberately designed so that 2 DPS and 2 of the tanks or healers will be in there at the end. So in order to properly space ourselves and make sure that DPS can take some of the support towers, we needed to use a rescue. Basically, 2 people run towards a spot. The healers pick one of them, rescue them over because it's impossible for them to make the movement in a clean fashion with the heavies that they have on. And, that's how we were resolving it. So high-end groups actually do this stuff, or at least simulate situations where this stuff could potentially be useful. As soon as debuffs on the right people at the right time. We do have that. E8S actually another decent example of that. T has that as well. Dot on the DPS that gives them a damage boost also hurts more the longer it lasts. It's another one. I was having a discussion, and I might make this into a short as well. These are exactly the kinds of ideas when I talk about making shorts. These are the kind of things that I talk about, and it's why I'm excited for it to be something that I can do more frequently on the channel. What's it called? A damaging shield. So you know how when you have a barrier like Sucker or Adlo or something, it's a green bar over your health. Now imagine if you got a negative shield where you needed to be healed to remove the shield, and until you do, or if you don't do it in time, something bad happens. And instead of it being this like bright neon green, it's like this dark red, something that's, I know green and red, not a great choice, but like something that's so tonally different from the green that you have for the other ones. So, not a bright color, a really dark color. And that shows that on your UI HUD, so it's, information that works. Now, there is some downside to that, of course. There is the thought that, when it's 1 pixel left, it can be kind of hard to tell if they have it or not. But just ideas like that. No, I think there's absolutely room, and I do hope they kind of reach into the vault of mechanics and look into more things like that for healers. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Well met, Mr. Happy. Well met to you too. What kind of vacuum would you recommend for cleaning up the house? So we have a couple of vacuums. We have small ones for the pets. I could not tell you for the life of me the model of them. I will say this though, once every month or other month, I guess it depends. We actually have a cleaning service come in and just once over our entire apartment. It's not that expensive. The first time was kind of expensive, but every time since then it's not really that expensive. And it just frees up Mel and I to, focus on work. It's just if we have really busy schedules or whatnot, we just don't, it's just one less thing for us to think about. So we actually do that once in a while. And I have them come in and, vacuum my office and whatnot as well. So it's still a mess, as you can see, because I have too many things. But at the very least, it's get some surfaces cleaned and wiped down and vacuumed and everything, because the cats leave food everywhere. But yeah, I couldn't tell you the exact model. No way. All right, we're already 40 minutes in, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm not feeling super hot right now. Just like a little feeling in my belly right now. So I kind of want to just get through the rest. So I'm going to lightning round the rest of the questions. I do have another not read more question here. And I'll at least say the greetings and salutations that came from this person. Question about playing healer for MSQ reminded me of this, but there's a scene that takes place in Walger's Reach where the settlement is attacked. I happen to be playing Astro at the time, and you do assist the healing in the cutscene. Which brings to my question, are you aware of any other scenes that differ depending on what job you are playing? There are a few. I think even the scene with Hoshfont in the vault, I think that was changed when they reworked it, so that if you are a healer, they turn to you and ask you to help heal or something along those lines. So there's definitely a few, but because I don't regularly do them on healer, I couldn't tell them to you off the top of my head. Then there was here someone piggybacking off the question about changing LB3s from last week. Do you think there would be an issue to allow us to swap around our LB1s or LB2s? No, but the reliability of what they do, I think, trumps the idea of the LB1s and LB2s being more unique. So I guess that's up for debate. I think that has less overall impact, but what you don't want, I think, again, the problem is people are going to want to achieve something where it's better to LB2 than LB3. And I don't think that they will ever allow that to be the case, which then creates the problem of why make them unique if the goal is to almost always try to have an LB3. Because if an LB2 is better or more desirable than an LB3, then the LB3 becomes useless. And if it's more useful in one situation, it's probably more useful in more situations. So all sorts of problems are going to pop up with that one. Longtime viewer, first time asker, interested in learning about game dev backends infrastructure. Are you aware that any past interviews involved with the 14 backend team? You know, they talk about it during live letters on occasion, actually, but I would say not, I don't have any exact references, but I would go back and look at these schedules for the previous fan festivals, because they usually have just a ton of different panels, and there might be panels there that can answer your questions. So that's about the best I can offer, but I do know they sometimes bring this stuff up even during general live letters. Somebody's saying, I actually do want to hear about your mom. That's fine. It's just, you know, it's weird when you, I felt like I was bringing it up too much, but all the same, thank you. Vis-a-vis video leveling past 100, introducing new players. That was today. This question's from 5 hours ago. I don't see a lot of people mentioning the other option, 2-lane stories. How feasible do you think it is? Where, you know, it's the same old story and new players can choose to start a new one. So that addresses the story related stuff, but the leveling related thing I think is more important, because the number getting too big, I think you should tackle both problems simultaneously. My opinion is that you should tackle the problem of, I have, what's it called? My leveling is tied to my story progression. So if I'm going to fix the leveling in terms of like not going past level 100, come up with an alternate solution, I should also come up with a problem that addresses the mounting amount of story, because they are the same problem. That's just my opinion though. So a branching story to me only slightly solves that. It's a second option to the level squish afterwards, but the way our story is written, it kind of doesn't work yet. Like, they need to write it that way before that idea works. And that's something that we've yet to see an indication that they will do, even if they have brought it up. We had another one that said hi. Made sure to say hi first and foremost. Joined a casual static from the FFXIV recruit website. Members have been kind. I'm incredibly excited to play with them. I was wondering if there were any respectful gestures, do's and don'ts. Just don't blame people. Don't make excuses, and just focus on improving. You know, be willing to take criticisms, and that's it. But I'm glad you used that site. Somebody who works with, or at least is an acquaintance of the person who made that site, you know, they reached out to me and said, thanks, you know, they're ecstatic that so many people want to use this site. And I genuinely look at that site and I think, this is so much better than the alternatives. You know, all I did was see a single tweet, checked it out and said, I want to make a video on this, where I explore it, like my first impression on it, my proper first impression. And so it was a genuine first impression of what I saw, and I loved it. So I really hope that website continues to be successful. And you know what? I'm going to tweet this. Or at least I'm going to DM it to the person, and so they can see just the claim, I suppose. So I'm also curious about the same chill background music comes from. It's a video from a website called Purple Planet Music, I believe. You can like purchase music licenses, and pretty much all of my music, unless it's like free for commercial use, I will, if it's free of licenses in general, I suppose, I'll pay like a music rights for it. So I believe it's called Moonrise from Purple Planet Music, if I'm remembering correctly. So that's where that is. Then we had the next one, 2 questions. They did say hello. I'm going to acknowledge that. Would we as a party still be massively overpowered for, say, Coil Savage if we were to unsync the fight, but equip gear that keeps our item level down to 105? So actually, yes. The problem is you cannot just go for the average item level. You have to go under it, because you need to account for the amount of stats you get from actually just being level 90. So you usually need to be far underpowered in order to match the health and or damage values that you need. For something that requires item level 105, you'd honestly probably have to wear stuff that's like item level like 20. I'm not even kidding. And you would honestly, that would make it harder than it's supposed to be, but anything more starts to make it easier in the other direction. I will say this though, if it's mechanics will punish you and kill you and your damage isn't too high, that's at the very least acceptable for practice sake. And you could definitely achieve that, but not by getting to item level 105. You would probably want to be somewhere more in the vicinity of like item level 35 or 40. But that is going to take some science, and I know people have kind of worked on that a little bit. Second, where would you recommend looking for rotation opener guides for lower level fights? Oh God, I don't even know, dude. They've changed. Doing low level openers, it's on some jobs, it's just the worst experience of my life. So I honestly, I don't even know. There are rotations out there, like I'm sure, like is it Wesk Albert YouTube, the YouTube channel that has like the level range stuff? He might have it, but even still, it's going to be jank and it's going to be awful. So good luck is all I'm really saying on that front. I had my first not hello because they just said slight comment and question. Ninja question, I have it definitely felt like I was hitting a wall where I was on Reaper, but I learned that you need to hit Communio twice under Arcane Circle, which is wonky to do. Absolutely agree. Doing the same on Learning Dragoon now. My question is, what is your method for creating your hotbars? Oh, so I actually have a video on that. If you go to my channel and search just the word hotbar, it's a more in-depth explanation of how I do my hotbars. It's old, but it's still pretty much accurate. I put buttons that I really need to know on a separate bar and I make them larger. I put all of my buffs on my mouse, and then I put those on their own separate hotbar, and then I put all the buttons from Shift 1 through 5, Alt 1 through 5, and just Basic 1 through 5, all next to each other on the kind of traditional 3-stack hotbar. I do then start to put like Shift and Alt keybinds for my mouse over on the right side of that hotbar. So that's, if you look through my stuff, you'll see that. But that's the general idea is the things I feel like I need to track the most go on like RT and F. And those will be on giant buttons. If I need more than that, then I usually have to come up with an alternative. Let's see. Top of the morning, controversial question. How come the 14 team is so against RMT? Like, would me buying a measly... So the main reason is because of the methods they usually use to obtain that gil. It's usually through hacking the game, exploits, or the most egregious thing, hacking actual player accounts to use them to advertise, to sell, and to steal their gil in order to sell. So they are actively pursuing compromising actual player accounts in order to do this stuff. Now, obviously, they don't want people botting or exploiting either, and that's usually what is required to do this kind of stuff. But it is the fact that they pursue actively stealing personal and account information with things like keyloggers in order to further their individual interests. So that is one of the biggest reasons. It's not because it's going to screw with the market. It's because it affects people who just want to play the game. Then we have another one. Good day, sir. I'll give you that extra pet for Ivy. She's napping, so I'm not going to touch her. You discussed several times your dislike for the Nier crossover. Is there a 14 crossover event you did enjoy? Yeah, I like the Monster Hunter one. The big thing with Nier is, again, I didn't like that it replaced a Final Fantasy 14 centric 24-man that would be used to, explain new lore elements, expand the world, make things more exciting, and was instead replaced with something that has no relevance at all to our game. That was the biggest thing I didn't like. But stuff like Monster Hunter, where it's fun, it's on the side, it was a permanent content thing that was functioned completely different from what we had before, was a great addition. And absolutely was only an improvement or an addition to the game, and we didn't sacrifice anything to get to that point. So yeah, stuff like that. And also the short ones, like Lightning Returns and, like the Final Fantasy XI Dragon Quest, the ones that just kind of come and go and aren't really that big a deal. The Garo event, really exciting thing to have for PvP. So yeah, it's little things like that. Little things like that are cool. Then we had another one, first time commenting. Hope you're having a good day. Same to you. Thought you about bringing back characters from previous Final Fantasy games to Final Fantasy 14. When you play Final Fantasy 14, you want to play Final Fantasy 14. What's the difference between the Yorha crossover raid and the Omega raid series, which is many crossover characters? It's the method in which they're used. And funny you mentioned Omega. I don't like the way most of the bosses are done in Omega. That Omega is nothing like any Omega from any other game. It's not just a continuation of his story from those other games. It is not just a carbon copy of him from those other games. It is a fully fleshed out story with a character and his own introspection and traits that is unique to Final Fantasy XIV. That being said, the bosses in the tier, the ones that are ripped right from Final Fantasies 5, 6, and 1, are the least inspired, laziest ways those characters could be incorporated, and are just an excuse for fan service that I do not like. Crystal Tower, and just entirely Final Fantasy 3, you know, even from beginning to end, the flow of the story very similar, but it ended up being made into this core aspect of how we can travel between dimensions and time, and, you know, our connections to different time eras, and it just became like a focal point. It's so great for expanding the world of Final Fantasy XIV. Yorha explained some things about the Drakkenir lore, and that's great for them, but I could care less. I could care less about it happening within our game. That could have happened somewhere else. It would have been really cool. I even would have thought it was cool, and even now I think it's kind of cool, but I didn't want it to be in 14. Then we had another greetings and salutations. Ever since Shadowbringers wanted royal authority to turn into atonement when the stacks are up. Also wouldn't mind dropping the stacks down as the one seeing. So yeah, but the way the rotation works, that makes things awkward, because sometimes you want to drop atonements deliberately, and if you still have an atonement when you're trying to drop atonements, then it creates a problem. I mean, I guess if you do that, then you just don't have the dropping atonements thing, or when you do drop atonements, you have to like drop them entirely, like doing Fast Blade gets rid of atonement or something like that. Otherwise, it gets a little bit awkward. But the question was actually, am I the only one that's a bit dissatisfied? No, I'm sure not. Plenty of people are dissatisfied. I'm not one of them, but I'm also not a tank main, so who cares what I think? So that's all there is to it. There's a lot of things I feel like they could still do for Paladin, especially with the button bloat category, but that's a whole nother thing, I suppose. Had a question here. Wondering if you're enjoying the new Machinist rework. Well, it's not a rework. The job plays exactly the same. You don't change the rotation at all, from what I can tell. It's just better now, and you can throw a wrench at something in order to make it deal less damage. The question, however, is something about their rotation. They have a different rotation than what's on the balance. I might have a different rotation. Get your thoughts on it versus how the balance runs their opener. Okay, let me read it briefly. Air Anchor, Barrel Stabilizer. You said Barrel Stabilizer twice, so I'm going to assume that that's just what you meant. Barrel Stabilizer, Reassemble, Wildfire. Okay, your first mistake, triple weaving. Never do that. It clips your GCD. It's expected that you'll probably do that multiple times in the fight, which means you lose entire GCDs, which nullifies any sort of potency gain you would get. Second mistake, you're letting your 2 damaging OGCDs stay on cooldown. Every second they stay on cooldown is a second you might lose a use across the rest of the fight. So you've already clipped the GCD, meaning you've probably wasted about half of a GCD's worth of potency. So on average, we'll say that's like 100 to 150 potency. Depends on the GCD. And then you've also potentially lost another 2 OGCDs, which is another, almost 300 potency as well. So in the first set of OGCDs, that's how much you've lost. And I think that kind of tells you where I'm going to go from now, because then you say drill, so okay, you've got drill. So the drill is the first wildfire GCD. Your next OGCD is hypercharge. Still haven't mentioned Gauss round and ricochet, which you could have at least fit in there alongside of the drill. 5 bursts, which should be alternating. GCD now and Endwalker use chainsaw. Okay, another problem. You're waiting until the end of hypercharge to get chainsaw, which means your robot, which is at 50 gauge, is now out of buffs, which is another huge loss. So yeah, there's just fundamentals about jobs that you need to understand when you're trying to come up with a rotation and why it is better or worse. Getting abilities that deal damage off cooldown, so that way you make sure you don't lose uses by the end of the fight, is one of the most essential things. And that seems to just be completely ignored in this potential opener here. Sure, it's preference or flavor. It's a bit silly. We have 4 more or less identical damage kits. Is this a healer related thing? Oh, healer dots. There you go. Yeah, and you did say hello. I'll give you that. Yeah, I mean, again, I really feel like the goal is to make healing more interesting or more engaging in more content than to try and adjust DPS. I think they'll just have more success doing that. Where do you see healing going? I don't see it going anywhere. I think it's going to focus. I think it's going to be exactly the same as it is now. Just, different actions and different layouts for actions, in my opinion. Let's see. What's another one? Don't know if I heard this correctly. You mentioned you're colorblind. Very. Trentanopian officially, but I have severe damage to the cones in my eyes. So much so that I'm considered... I'm like 1% of colorblind people. Like I'm that colorblind. I don't see in monochrome, however. And you said your husband is pretty much monochrome. So I can see differences in colors, but I can't identify colors. So blue and purple, I can't. I mentally can't process the difference. Reds and greens very often, unless I need a point of reference. Almost every color that exists, I would be guessing, trying to tell you what it is. I need a point of reference to know that something is a certain color so that I can confer that same thing and try to tell if something else is the same color. I can only do color by association pretty much. So half the time you hear me saying a color, I'm guessing because I'm trying to like draw lines between like a stop sign being red and a stoplight being green when it's go. You know, like I'm trying to make those comparisons, and that's as good as it's going to get for me. Let's see the latest Day of the Realm, how different our party finder experiences are with the new trial. Skipping LC, clearing with level 100 weapons, clearing with 15 deaths, and rage becoming irrelevant. Seems like we're playing different games. I waited until the weekend to start working. Does PF quality? Weekend PF is always worse. This is infinitely true all the time. That being said, everyone's going to have different experiences. It's also going to depend on your personal contribution to that party's success. For example, if you're the one playing the healer, and you are able to survive a mechanic, res everyone without messing up a mechanic, like you can have major impacts on success with jobs like that. Or you can be on a job that can't do any of that and have to hope your healer is. And I got healers that were. And I think that was really the key difference, was having healers that didn't just give up and jump off. They did it correctly and saved everyone else. Who would Mrs. Madge be, and what would she say on Fridays? What? I've had a girlfriend for like, how many years is it? This stays 2023. It'll be 9 years. Yeah, 9 years soon. Okay. Either way, yeah. But I don't know about the Fridays thing. I feel like there's a joke here happening. I don't understand. Well, let's see. I don't understand all the nuances of how when damage is calculated, namely when I need to apply MIT. MIT needs to be applied before the damage is taken. If I remember correctly, mitigation is multiplicative, meaning that if you keep stacking mitigation tools, they become progressively worse. So it's not like 10% makes a 20%. It's 10% and then 10% of the 90% that's left over. So you end up with 19% mitigation. But it needs to be before it finishes casting. It can't not be before it casts. It needs to be before the skill finishes casting. And not even before the damage applies. Again, it has to be before it finishes casting. Multiplicatively, I just answered. You want to apply MIT before the cast ends, so the enemy casts snapshots on the MIT. That is correct. MITs are stacked additively. Okay, so they're not additive, like we just said. But then there are also differences, I believe, in calculations behind outgoing damage from targeted MITs versus incoming damage from non-targeted MITs and how those are calculated. The general idea is you want 20 to 30% mitigation on most major tools. You can deal with less, but that gives you a wiggle room that is safe. And so that's what most people aim for, regardless of whether it comes from feint, reprisal, addle, dismantle, or shields or anything. You just generally want that amount to be safe. But yeah, that's the thing. They're multiplicative and before the cast finishes, ideally. That depends on the type of damage it is as well and what the source of the damage is. 6.3 spoilers, but not really. Why does Varshawn need a coat when he's in Garlemald? Maybe he just wants to fit in. I don't know. Maybe it gets cold. Maybe even though he's in a vessel, it still gets cold. Quick PvP question. Am I stuck in Bronze Hell? Max my last 2 series via unranked. Now that it's time and motivation, thought I would dip my toes into rank. Yeah, I mean, Bronze Hell exists in every game. You know, you just have to get a win streak and get out. And until then, you're living in hell. And that's just how it's going to be. Why was Ishtola not affected the second time she used Flow? She wasn't in there very long. I'm pretty sure that's stated, but I'd be lying if I said I was certain about that. So, yeah, it's because she wasn't in there for very long. Is there any lore behind why mammoths talk like this? It's just it's a verbal tick to indicate that they are speaking robotically. That's all that is. It's nothing more fancy than that. Maybe saying send well wishes to your mom's way would be more sensible than just saying hi. I'll take that. Thank you. Near crossover rant was very cathartic to listen to. I'm not all against crossovers. Evil East raids were great. Evil East also not considered a crossover raid. It had a guest developer, but wasn't a crossover raid. I just noticed this isn't a question. So, but, you know, I still agree with some of the sentiments. And then I think we're finally coming to the last question or two down here because I'm trying to get all of them, but I'm also kind of lightning rounding through this because I'm not feeling super hot. Don't have a question. Thought it'd be fun to let you know that I wrote this on the hashtag means Mr. Happy Mondays in German. Oh, Montage mit Herr Frolic. I'm sorry to everyone who is German out there. Everyone. Machinist question. I was killing the Kurthus Western Highlands Merca A rank and inflicted freeze, so I summoned my automaton to keep the damage going. It just stood there stupid doing nothing because you weren't attacking, basically. Would be the reason. It was because you weren't attacking. You couldn't attack it because you were frozen. Yeah, Merca's kind of a jerk when you try to solo them. They're a jerka. Your mic stand is dusty. There, it's better now. Okay. And I think that's the last one. Then it's just a few remaining comments down there. But there we go. We managed to get through it. This is one of my longer Q&As, but there were a lot of interesting questions, and I got some inspiration for some YouTube shorts from some of you. So thanks. I'll definitely be getting to work on that right after right after this, I suppose. But that's going to be a wrap for this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. And thank you to everyone for tuning in, as you always do. Ask your questions in the comment section of the video below as well. Anyway, I'll see you next time. And until then, take care.